So first, the Rebbe makes the distinction between the Sholem that was in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, that the greatness and the kingdom of Shlomo was heard for a distance, so that Malchus Shva came to David, came to Shlomo. Shlomo didn't go to her, but she came to Shlomo. But the Rebbe says still it was his name that had to reach there, and the further the place is, the name diminishes, and it takes time for Malchus Shva to come, for her to come to Yerushalayim, to Shlomo HaMelech. However, the birur that's going to be in the days of Mashiach, this was by Shlomo. But because over there is going to be the revelation of the infinite light of the Ein Sof, so therefore it's going to be everywhere, and it's going to reach them as is with full potency, and they're going to be transferred right away. So there's a big difference between the Sholem in the days of Shlomo and the Sholem in Yemei HaMashiach. Let's look inside. So based on all the above, we can explain that Mamer Padah Beshalom. Although the concept of redeeming in a peaceful way also was in the days of Shlomo, nevertheless, Hashlemus Shabazeh, the complete Sholem, the wholesomeness of Sholem, Mashiach, will be in the days of Mashiach. Mashiach Gufa, and within the days of Mashiach, it'll be Betkufa Habeis, the second period of Yemei HaMashiach, in which there will be a total change in the Maisa Bereshis. Over there is going to be the ultimate Shalom. And the Rebbe is going to connect this to the three different levels that the Rebbe talked about in learning Nigla the Torah and the two levels in Primis HaTorah, connecting them to the time of Shlomo HaMelech and then to the two periods during the time of Mashiach. So the Rebbe says, the Shlomo shegimul dargis elu b'shlomo, that this three b'mei Shlomo b'tkufa aleph d'mei Mashiach b'tkufa beis, what took place in the days of Shlomo and in the first period of Yemei Mashiach and the second period, they're similar to the three above mentioned levels in Torah. The idea is the Zeshe Malkas Shvo Shoma as Shema Shlomo. The fact that Malkas Shvo, the queen of Shvo, heard about the news of Shlomo, U'al Yidei Sheshmoi, it's through his name. What does his mean name? Shlomo HaMelech's name, the Shem Hu Ha'ora. Shem is a ray. The name Ha'ora Nimshach V'Nispashet L'Merchakim. It extended and expanded to distance. Ad Le'eretz Shvo, until it came to the land of Shvo. Which means this was B'derech Sholem. He didn't have to go out to convince them. He had to wage war. He sat in Yerushalayim, and from Yerushalayim, he impacted. His name went out, and it brought them to Shlomo. He was in his place in Yerushalayim. V'Hashem Shlomo, and his name, Shema Shlomo, the news about Shlomo, Nimshach v'gil l'shvo, that continued and reached Shvo. But this, the further that you have to extend that news, the Shema of Shlomo, it diminishes because it's further away. So it means the impact is less because less people, the further it is away, less people know about it. That's about even finding out about Shlomo, that the further away, the less Shlomo is recognized there. But especially as it comes, and also when it comes to the birur, the sorting out. So just hearing about Shlomo didn't change Malka's shva. She had to travel. She had to come to Shlomo. The gam la'achrei shemalka's shva shomas shema Shlomo. Even after the queen of Shva heard about Shlomo HaMelech, the news of Shlomo, Hutzrach Liyos, as the Pasuk says, it required to be Vatova Yerushalm, that she came to Yerushalayim. She had to come. So, come to Yerushalayim was a trip. Shahalicha Mishvol Yerushalayim. The traveling from Shvot Yerushalayim Lokeach Meshach Zman takes a period of time. It takes time. V'tircha trouble. So you see, while it's impacting, but the impact has its limitation, how far it goes, and how it is mevarer for them to come. Takes a trip. It takes time. It takes trouble. V'rak oz nase habir. Only then becomes that biru, the sorting out of the Malkas Shvo. And this is similar to the biru that takes place to the study of Torah. Bedugmas habirur shaydei gali the Torah, similar to the sorting out through the gali the Torah, which needs to come down into the discussions of the various different isur and arguments, but it's all similar to the birur that takes place by Shlomo, not like b'derech milchama, it's still b'derech shalom, but it's still limited. As opposed to the sorting out that will take place when Mashiach comes. It'll be in a much higher way, much more profound and powerful way. Because at that point, there will be the revelation of the infinite light, of the infinite, of Hashem, that is before the Tzimtzum. That light that is going to reveal the Yemesa Mashiach, who b'chol mokim b'shoveh, it's everywhere equal. You don't have to, it's not in Yerushalayim by Shlomo, and from Shlomo it has to come to Malkas Shva. The light of Bli Gvul has no limitations. It's not confined and it's not defined, not by Yerushalayim and not by Shva. It is Bli Gvul, it's unlimited. It's everywhere equal. So that's why the way the impact and sorting out the world is not in a way of drawing down and for the light to descend below. And then then we got to bring up that which is being sorted out above, like Malkas Shva. First, we have to come down to Malkas Shva, and then we have to bring Malkas Shva up to Yerushalayim. That's not the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. Ki'im sha'oir k'moy shehu yoir b'chol mokem. The oir, as is oir, is going to shine everywhere. Shalochein. Therefore, oz epech el amim. That's why at that point I will turn to the nations. So the Pasuk says, I will turn the nations around. Not that they're going to have to come. They're going to stay in their existence and they'll stay in their places. The Eibusha will do what? Everybody will serve Hashem with one shoulder, everybody together, which means they don't have to come to Yerushalayim because it reaches them in their place, in their mitzias. They are being nizbarer over there. But there is a difference between the two periods in the time of Mashiach. Hello. Within this, there is a difference between the first period when Mashiach comes to the second period. The first period, there's going to be no change. There's no change between now and the days of Mashiach, only the enslavement of the nation, but there's not going to be, nothing is going to change in nature the way creation was created. Hagilui halikus sheyiya ba'ilam. So how is that revelation of godliness that is going to be in the world? Yiyah mitzad gilui oirin sof ha'believable shemeir b'chol mokum. It's going to be because of the revelation of the infinite light, of the infinite that shines everywhere. So it's not going to come because of the world itself, that appreciation, but it's going to come from the outside. It's sort of going to be forced from the outside, from the Eirab Ligvul. Belochein, but the world itself, no, is not going to become revealed in it because the world itself. Why? Because the world will still be working its normal way as it custom. And that's why in the first period, the revelation by the created being and their subjugation, that's like something added to their existence. They exist, but they're bittul, but the bittul is not part of them. And that is this is similar to understanding in the grasp of the inner part of Torah. As the Rebbe said before, this is like an addition to the person. That's why there could be a change, or at least there could be a weakness. Canal, as the Rebbe said before. As the Rebbe said, that's when there is primis ha-Torah b'havona v'hasoga that we have now too. So there could be a question, there could be a challenge, because it's not seeing it, it's understanding. Understanding is like an addition. And that's in the first tkufa, as opposed to in the second period of Mashiach. That there's going to be a change and a novelty within creation, within nature. Yesh leimar, we can say, that revelation of the world and the subjugation of the created being, is going to be also from the nature and the boundaries of the world itself. They are going to become bottled. They're going to become kalim for that giluay and sof habligvul. They're going to be. It's going to be part of them. It's their mitzias that is going to become like that, like the re'iyah in Pnimius HaTorah. Okay, so it's kind of hard to get to this highest level that we're talking about. Learning Torah, Nigla the Torah is one level of study, but Pnimius and Pnimius other word. But the Rebbe says not to worry. Really, all of the levels of Torah have a connection. V'hinei, Gimel Pirushim Medargis Anal Padah Beshalom Nafshi. These three interpretations, different levels of Padah Beshalom Nafshi, is Kibon Shekola Pirushim Hem Ba'isa HaPosik, since all these interpretations are in that Posik, meaning a deeper level in Sholem, in the Padah Beshalom. Hem Sheyachim Zeluzeh. They're connected to each other, and they come in one continuous way. The noise of Alzeh. Besides the fact, Shekol Hadargis Heim Torah. The fact, the uniting factor is we're all talking about three different levels, but they're all in Torah. So Torah itself, the fact that we say that it's Torah means by definition they're connected. Whether it's Nigla the Torah, it's Pnimius HaTorah Derech Havona, or Pnimius HaTorah Derech Riyah. Just the fact it's all Torah means that they're connected. We don't have to even look further. Besides that, the Rebbe just says the same thing is true when we talk about Tefillah. Tefillah we say is Milchoma. But what happens to Tefillah of Shabbos? That's not Milchoma. But it's still Tefillah. There's one category Tefillah, the category of Torah. So the fact that Torah itself, that all these three levels on level of Torah unites them, but the Rebbe says more than that. But the Kemoisha Bitfila, the Noisef Alzesha Kol Adargisim Torah. In addition, that all levels are Torah, the Kemoisha Bitfila, just like when we say Tfila. So we're not going to make a chiluk, we're saying that Tfila is Bederech Hislapshus, and we're not going to say, oh, but when it comes to Shabbos, which it's not, it's still Tfila. Gam Tfila the Shabbos, the Kemoisha Bitfila. Gam Tfila the Shabbos. Even though that distorting out of Shabbos is in a way of relaxed, not in a way of milchama. Before we were talking about tefillah shlas sloiso shas krovo. That basically is the weekday davening. But Shabbos v'derech menucha mikoma koim gama tefillah. The Shabbos is not tefillah, but it's still the idea is still the idea of tefillah. So in general category, it's categorized as tefillah. Derech zeu gam b'negei l'Torah, the similar b'negei l'Torah, shegam galya the Torah shebechinas hislapshus, that even the revealed part of Torah, which is dresses up in these kashmis, the kinyonim, and yonim Torah is still, what is it? It's Torah. It's just like Torah, tefillah, these are categories. But besides that, hinekol hadargas the Torah, hem inyan echad. All levels of Torah are really one inyan, Torah achas. It's one Torah. Nigla pnimis Torah. It's all one Torah. Shalochein. So why is it so important? Because you're going to say we have to wait to reach the other levels for Yemesa Mashiach. We don't have it now. No. Shalochein al yidei limud ha-Torah achshav. Through learning Torah now. Gam ha-limud the nigla sheb'Torah. Even when we study nigla of the Torah, Yizkul l'terasa shel Mashiach b'chinas Riyah. We will merit the terasa of Mashiach, which is the level of Riyah, as we said. Ki yidua be'inyan v'talmud b'yodei, as it's known. Ashri misha bolaka v'talmud b'yodei, that it's going to be in the way of Riyah, as the Rebbe explained before, with the coming of Mashiach. So here the Rebbe says, Sholem, all levels of Torah. Tefillah, all levels of tefillah. But here the Rebbe wants to say now that actually not only all levels of Beshalom, all levels of Padiyah. Even when you're doing Padiyah, the Milchama is also connected to the Padiyah Beshaloms. Even the Milchama that you have to have, but it's still Padiyah. And all Padiyahs go together. Perhaps we can say even deeper. Shagam hadarget b'diyah shebederech milchama. Even the level of redemption, which is in the way of war, kivon shenikras b'shem b'diyah, since it is called redemption, hishayeches lib'diyah b'sholem, it's connected to redeeming b'sholem, because it's still b'diyah. Ad ledarga chinaylis tiyeh b'mishetiyeh b'meisa mashiach b'tkufa shniyah. All the way the level of Sholem, that's going to be the greatest level, which is going to be in the times of Mashiach in the second period. Chazal, to use the language our sages of blessed memory, they say Milchama nami aschalta de geulahi, that the war, the Gemara Megillah says that the war is also the beginning of redemption. So even though it's a war, but it's still padiyam. So when you're waging the war, that's also part of it. Kivan, the shem Geula Allah, because it has the name of Geula. So even though it's far away from Geula, actually, this is from the Rashi, it's still called Geula. So we can understand now, because we're talking about kislev. Kislev is the level of Padah Beshalom, but the reality was that there was a lot of struggles over there, and there was a requirement of Mesiras Nefesh, and but yet this is still all one and the same thing. The Rebbe explains. Maposik Padah Beshalom Nafshi, to explain the connection, the tie of the redemption of Yud Kislev and Yud Kislev with the Posik Padah Beshalom Nafshi. The L'chayre would seem we know how things took place, how the Alter Rebbe was redeemed. And in a similar way, in the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe, it wasn't like everybody was just running to free him. There were things that you have to push down, you had to press. There was effort, which means there were these were matters of war. How do we say Padah Beshalom, Yud Kislev, or Padah Beshalom, when there were challenges over there and it needed effort? There were wars that needed to be battles in order to get to their freedom. And here we're tying it to the Pasuk, Padah Beshalom Nafshi, Shekoyi, that what is Padah Beshalom Nafshi? That refers to as the Mittler Rebbe explains. Al Padah Beshalom. Here we're talking as it's in the ultimate wholesomeness in the second period of the Mesa Mashiach, as the Rebbe explained. How could we say that this is the Padah Beshalom when here there were challenges? But the Rebbe wants to say every Gula is called Gula, and there's a connection. The Rebbe says the explanation is the whole hadargis shebibediyah, and this is not only Padah Beshalom, but all levels of Padiyah. Period. All Padiyas. Kshuris im haPadiyah Beshalom betachas hashleimus tilos love are all tied to the complete redemption and peace that's going to be in the ultimate wholesomeness in the future to come. The Yuvans, will understand this based on what the master redemption, the Mittler Rebbe explained to Mamer, the Inyan Padah Beshalom Nafshi B'Avodas Ha'adam, that this idea, how do we explain Padah Beshalom Nafshi? What does it explain in service of man? That Sha'apediyah, the Nefesh Alokis Ma'agolus, the Nefesh Abahamis, that how do we redeem the godly soul from the exile Nefesh Abahamis? Hiba'ifun the Shalom is in a peaceful way. Shenefesh Abahamis, Einam and I get this cloud. It doesn't oppose at all. That is the Padah Beshalom Nafshi, to rid yourself, free yourself from the Nefesh Abahamis without opposition, Nefesh Abahamis. So the Alter Rebbe the Mittler Rebbe explains, how do you achieve that level of Beshalom? When you serve with self-sacrifice. Or Mesiras Nefesh Gufa, Mesiras Nefesh the Yechida, within Mesiras Nefesh, when it comes based on the level of Yechida of the Neshama. It's not sufficient yet, the Makif of Chaya, of the Neshama, but you need the level of the Yechida of the Neshama. Dal Yidei HaMesiras Nefesh Mitzad Chaya, when the Mesiras Nefesh from the perspective, from the level of the Neshama Chaya, Nase Rak Iskafya Nefesh Abahamis, that only subdues the Nefesh Abahamis. Val Yidei HaMesiras Nefesh Mitzad Yechida Davke. But when your self-sacrifice is because the revelation of Yechida, he misbatelas legamri, then the opposite side is totally negated. Yuvon hakesher dibdiya shebederech milchama. So now, even when the Padiyah is in a way of war, when you have to force iskafya, havodah shemitzad chaya, and then even if you go lower, lamata yoser, even lower than chaya, havodah shemitzad nefesh ruach neshama, when your avodah is because the koich is pnimiyim and battling with the nefesh alikis. So we understand now the connection with Padah Beshalom Nafshi to the level of Yechida. Because ki bechol avodah v'avodah, because any avodah, whether it's Yechida or it's nefesh ruach neshama, in every avodah, yesh bo behelem hamesiras nefesh besad Yechida. In an obscure, hidden way, you have the level of B'sidus nefesh of inside yechida. Even though what you see is yechida, or what you see is chaya, or you see nefesh ruach neshama, but if it has behelem the mesidus nefesh yechida. Could Isa betanya, like the Rebbe says in Tanya, the Esek HaTorah v'ha-mitzvahs v'ha-tfilo inyan mesidus nefesh mamash. The occupation of Torah and mitzvahs and davening is the actual idea of actual mesidus nefesh. The kivon sha'amitis inyan the mesidus nefesh mamash, or mesidus nefesh mitzad yichida. So every idea, every occupation in Torah and mitzvahs has the level of mesidus nefesh. This is a Perek Mamal of Tanya, and because it has the level, every mitzvah has the level of mesidus nefesh. Hare nimtzo with the kibon shamitis. In the mesidus nefesh mamish. What is really mesidus nefesh? Not chaya, but yichida, or mesidus nefesh sad yichida. So every time we're asking with Torah mitzvahs, we have yichida there. Hare nimtzo. Shebechol inyan the Torah mitzvahs. In every aspect of Torah mitzvahs, afilu ha'inyonim apshutim the Torah mitzvahs, even the very simple matter Torah mitzvahs, which means we don't even need the Torah to tell us about it. Even if the Torah, God forbid, was not given to us, we could learn it from the Behemoth Order. So it means it's a level in Torah which is very simple and obvious that we can learn, and yet we say that everything is mesidus nefesh. Now the Rebbe writes in Tana, Yesh koyach mesidus nefesh liyechida. There is the power of mesidus nefesh of yechida. So it doesn't matter what revealed level you're using to accomplish, but in it there is the mesidus nefesh of yechida. V'yisei mizu and more than shegam ha'avone v'hasoga de Torah, even the understanding and the grasp of Torah, it's also before you have to have, before learning and understanding, you have to have the acceptance nase that you will do. As the pasuk says, brought down of the Gemara in Shabbos, Tumas Yeshorim Tanchem, the innocence, the simplicity of those who follow straightly Hashem will lead them. That it's the level of Agdimu Pumaychelu Naichu, they first say will do the Nasa before the Nishma. The Inyan Hagdomas Nasa Nishma, what is this introducing? First say will do before we listen. Who habitul lebal horotzin. That subjugation not to what he wants, but to the master of the will. We say whatever Hashem wants, because we don't even know what he wants yet, because we're saying we're going to do. That's a bittul lebal horotzin, shelamayla bittul horotzin. The bittul zeh botz bam etzem haneshama. That bittul comes from the essence of the neshama, shelamayla hagiluyim da neshama, which is higher than the giluyim, than the chayed nefesh ruach neshama. Bechinas yechida. This is the level of yechida. So it turns out, even before you understand, you have to introduce it with the level of yechida, because that's what is required to Tumas Yishorim Tanchem to be able to have the Avona Vasoga. So it turns out it's all about Mesiras Nefesh, it's all about the Yechida. So it doesn't matter what part of Torah you're learning, you always have that level of Yechida. Rebbe asks now that it seems in the Mamer that it's not talking about the level of Mesiras Nefesh, the way the Rebbe is talking about the bittul bal harotz in the bittul of Yechida, because in the Mamer he talks only that is the bittul ritzoynoisov in the Mamer, and that they're all equal, but not to say that is bittul to the bal harotzim, it's at the level of Yechida. But the Rebbe says all levels of Mesiras Nefesh are connected. So whether it is Mesiris Nefesh, that all Ritzonis are one, or that he has no Rotzin at all because he's bittul to the Bala Rotzin, they're connected, just like we say, all Yiras are connected. Everything's on the Vagam, the Inyan HaMesiris Nefesh. Hamavuer b'Mamer Hanal, although the Mesiris Nefesh, the idea that's explained in the Mamer of the Bal Hagula, of the Bal Hushin is Batlu, Kol Ritzonisov, that all of his wishes become bottled. Va'at shekol ha'inyonim heim bishtavus, so that everything is equal. And here we're saying that it's a bittel of agnomes nasa l'nishma, the bittel lebal horotzin, and the level of yechida, which is a higher level than the Rebbe speaks over there in the Maimon, the middle of Rebbe. Yesh loimar, we can say, shekol ha'dargas the mesiris nefesh and minyan echad, all the levels, the steps in mesiris nefesh are one, whether it's this level of mesiris nefesh discussed before, the Mesiris Nefesh, the Bittul Balrotz, and all Ritzonis are Bishtavus. This is really one idea. But Derech HaYidua, Binyan HaYira, similar to what it's known with regards to Yira, the Kivon Sheyira Hi Bittul, Shlilas HaMetzias, since Yira, different levels of Yira, but all of Yiras are considered one, because what is Yira? Is the level of self-negation. Shlilas hametzias, rejecting your entity. L'chein kol hadargas shebiyira hem yira achas. Therefore, all steps in yira are really one. Al derech zeh yesh leimer binyan habitl mesiris nefesh. Similar, we can say the bitl that we have mesiris nefesh, that all levels have one mesiris nefesh, whether it's mesiris nefesh, as explained in the Maimon of the Balagula, or the mesiris nefesh of Yechida. It's really what it's all mesiris nefesh, because it's one level of bittul. And the contrary, Mesiris Nefesh is talking all of the person. Yira is one character trait. V'adrabe. Ki von bittul Mesiris Nefesh u'mitzat klolus v'etzma nefesh. Since the subjugation of Mesiris Nefesh is because the general and the essence of the soul, udloik bittul the Yira shirak midachas, unlike this subjugation of Yira, which is one measure. So even by Yira, which is one particular measure, we're saying all the bittles are really one, all the levels of Yira are one. But that's a particular specific midah. So this idea that they're all one idea when it comes by Mesiris Nefesh is more than by Yira, because this is a very general subject, generally level of subjugation. And the Rebbe gives a example. There is this specific subjugation when you follow orders in the army, and then there is the general when you enter the army. As soon as you enter the army, you devote yourself, you lose your metzias, and then you lose your metzias in the protestika, in the specifics. V'adrabah. Yuvan Zalpi Moshe Bachus will understand it by an example of the government below in this world, how it works. When a person enters into the army, even though he hasn't yet served in the army, and certainly for sure he wasn't yet at war, he just entered. He didn't serve yet, and he wasn't in war. He still gives himself totally over. He becomes no longer in charge of himself. Somebody else takes control of him. The same thing is in the spiritual army. We are in God's army, in Hashem's army. How does every Yid have that acceptance of the yoke? As the known expression, Yid accepts the yoke. That's the way you enter Tzivus Hashem, by accepting the yoke. So, That giving yourself over, becoming part of the Tzivos Hashem, entering the army, is a total giving over. Umesiras zu, so this giving over is in a higher hikishuro meir ba mesiras nefesh mitzad yechida b'darga chid magus. This devotion, this giving yourself over, is something in which it lights the mesiras nefesh that comes from yechida on the highest level. So therefore, el mesiras nefesh is whether it's mizbatel or it's noisov, it's also part of going in Hashem's army, in which the level of Yechida, the devotion of the ultimate highest level of Mesiras Nefesh. So therefore, the Rebbe says that any time when it's really a Padiyah, and even though there is challenges, but deep down there is the level of Yechida, there's the level of the essence. We can also explain what we find in the Rishalmi on the Pasuk Padah Beshalom, ala Pasuk Padah Beshalom nafshi gamer ki b'rabim hoyu imodi. So the Rishalmi explains what is b'rabim hoyu imodi. The koi ala anshe Avshalom, this goes on the people of Avshalom. She is palul l'shlem b'shel David. They prayed for the success, the peace of David. So here we see that they prayed. That the B'diyah B'Shalom is prayer. They prayed for him. That means that it was a Shalom Dike B'diyah. But prayer, the Rebbe said before, was in the way of war. That's not Shalom. But now that the Rebbe explains that all redemption, whether through war or not, it's still connected to B'diyah B'Shalom. This is a little difficult to understand. The Yerushalmi, who says that it has to do with prayer. That the redemption of B'Shalom is with Torah. Tefillah is in a path of Milchama. And the prayer for the people of Avshalom, that was connected to the war of Avshalom against David. Also to understand the connection to the Pasuk Padah Beshalom, also associated with davening. We're saying all that Torah is Beshalom, but here, by the redemption of Alter Rebbe, was associated with davening as well. It says, Kishakarisi b'Sefer Tehillim. He was reading Tehillim. Din Yona shel Amiras Tehillim. What's the idea of saying Tehillim? Ava Pisha Sefer Tehillim Uchavdalas Svarim de Tanakh Torah. Although, notwithstanding, the book of Tehillim is one of the 24 books of the Tanakh, which is Torah. But Utfila, but Lepoil Mamish, that is davening. Ubashena Kosov, to use the language of the pasuk, says, Ne'im Zmiris Yisrael, the sweet song of Israel. Song is prayer. This Zmiris Shayochim Li Tefillah. Song has an association to prayer. So, what are we talking about? Padah Beshalom Nafshi for the Alter Rebbe, and connecting it with Tehillim, which is prayer. Especially as we know from the stories of our Rebbes, our leaders, that the redemption of the Alter Rebbe that came through the prayers of his students and his followers and the Hasidim and his Hasidim, and all those that go in his footsteps. Their prayers brought about the redemption. And this redemption that comes through davening, which Shas Loiso, Shas Krova, davening is a time of battle. And it's coming when you're saying Padah Beshalom, which is not the level of tefillah, which is level of Torah, and this is all coming through tefillah. How could we say Padah Beshalom? So we can say the explanation, the key one she'esek ha-Torah mitzvahs hu inyan mesiras nefesh mamish. B'chlal, Torah mitzvahs is mamish mesiras nefesh k'muvalil metanya, is brought before from chapter 41, Perek Aleph, Perek Ma'av Tanya. V'chein gam tefillah kashura in Padah Beshalom. So even if it's tefillah, it's tied to Padah Beshalom because it's all mesiras nefesh, and mesiras nefesh is all in the level of Yechida, which is all in the essence, in the revelation, well, that's all the level of Beshalom. And the Rebbe says, Sha'ad can say the contrary, Inyan ha-mesiras nefesh u'betfilah yesim b'Torah. The idea of mesiras nefesh is in davening more than in Torah. Kislev she'ezeh she'esek ha-Torah mesiras nefesh mamish. When Eisek Kater Mesiras Nefesh Mamish is Hareherger said it's Mesiras Nefesh, Tzarich Liyes Koidem Shias Chilimet. Before you start to learn, you have to reflect and you have to devote the Eisek of Torah Mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe says has to be done with Mesiras Nefesh. That's the only way you can do it. So before starting to davening, before you're starting to learn. Same thing is, if you're learning for a long period of time, you have to remind yourself every once in a while. When he learns many consecutive hours, every hour you have to reflect on the level of Mesiras Nefesh. That's the only way to do Mekayim fully the Torah. But at the time that he's studying, when at the time that he's occupied in understanding and grasping what he's learning, can't have that time. He doesn't feel that subjugation of the self of Mesiras Nefesh because he's busy thinking about what he's learning. At that time, he has to be who's a king? The Rabbanon, those who learn the Torah, they're a king. We find the Torah is boiling in him, meaning he's taking a stand, and he's actually not in a level of bittul of Mesiras Nefesh, but he's taking a stand, and the Torah is boiling in him. So, by Torah, the Mesiras Nefesh is not so prevalent all the time. It's not mashenki b'tefillah tzorich liyis ka'avda kamamora tachlis habitl, but the whole davening needs to be like a servant in front of the master tachlis habitl, the bitl of Mesiras Nefesh. So you see that it's even more than by Torah. So the Rebbe twisted it around now. Not only does tefillah also because it's part of the service of Hashem. And Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, every service of Hashem needs Mesiras Nefesh. And real Mesiras Nefesh is Yechida, is total bittul. So everything has that level of total bittul. But the Rebbe says in Torah, there's a time that you have to use your mind in between to think and to become Malke Rabbanon and to Reis Marasklev. Torah has to be in level of tefillah, has to be in level of bittul. So it has even more bittul than Torah. Yud, Apikol Anal, Yuvon Zeh. So based on this, we understand how we now are going to merit Losid Love. Al Dei Dafka Al Dei Havoida Ata Bizman, Bazman Diksud Mashiach. Now, in the time of the heels of Mashiach, Kasher Achoshech Yichasa Oretz, when the darkness, as the pasuk says, covers the land, how are we, our service in such a dark time, boyim lahagiluyim shalagula asida, we're going to come. We come to the redemption, the revelations of the redemption that is coming. How are we the ones that are going to bring about those great redemptions when we are in the hills of Mashiach in the darkness? Because Davke in this time, when you need to occupy yourselves with sparks of Kedusha that fell into unclean places, we need to turn bitterness to sweetness and darkness to light. And we need to do from time to time. We go out the 4 cubits of Torah. From the 4 cubits of davening, Lord says, to go out from the shul and the study hall. The Shulchan Aruch says Hanig b'minig derech eretz, to go deal with them in the ways of the world, to go ahead and deal with the sparks. And yet, it's davke mekomukom alidei avoda achshov. Davke, it's davke through now, avoda now, mevinas agula asida. Then we bring about the future redemption. Those yikuyim mashakosov. At that point, it will be fulfilled what it says, va'atem, to look to lechad echad, you will be collected one by one. Kol echad v'echad miYisrael, each and every one of the Yidden, v'chol Yisrael, no Yidden. V'eskafos bom uzhovam itom. Their silver and their gold with them. In kol nitzutzes ha'kedusha ha'shayochim lahem, together with all the sparks of kedusha that belong to the Yidden, when we get collected, Yidden and everything that belongs to them, v'gam hanimtzoyim bekaspom v'zov kipshuta, and also those that are fine, literally with their silver and gold. Lefi, how come? How does this happen? Lefi, the answer is lefi shabavoida zubizman hagolus yeshno inyan hamsidus nefesh betachlis, because in the time our avoida during golus we have the ultimate, complete level of Mesidus Nefesh. As the known teaching of the Alter Rebbe, and at length in the memorim of the leader of our generation, my father-in-law, the Rebbe, on the verse, Moshe was the most humblest person of all mankind, Asher al Pnei Adama, that's on the face of the earth. Sha'anova de Moshe, the true humility of Moshe, which Moshe emes v'teros emes. Moshe is true and his teaching is true. So that Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the ultimate truth, he was humbled especially in the connection to the generation of the hills of Mashiach. When he witnessed, he saw their self-sacrifice by reserving Torah mitzvahs be'inyan al yizbayis from b'nei amaligim, not to be impacted by those who make fun of him. This brings the fulfillment of the promise that the humble will add more simcha by Hashem, simchas oilam al rishon, the eternal joy, the simcha on their head, simchas hagula, hamitis v'ashlema, the true and complete redemption, the joy of the redemption, that comes specifically, especially through spreading the wellspring outside, in a way they'll be immediately redeemed. The Padah Beshalom, in a way of redeemed with peace, without any trouble, until the promise will be fulfilled. Kings will be those who will raise you, and the officers, the wives, will be nursing. And they will bring all your brothers, all from the pasuk, in a clear and a pure verse, in the verses in Yeshayim and Tes in the end. Still in the last days of Golus, and then, and immediately and completely in the full sense, literally the true and complete redemption of the Mashiach Tzidkenu, to the righteous Mashiach, very speedily in our days, mamish.